I thank the members of the House Oversight and Reform Committee for the opportunity to present this testimony. My name is Andy Jackson. I am the director of the Civitas Center for Public Integrity at the John Locke Foundation in Raleigh, North Carolina. As part of my work at Locke, I advocate for election law and regulation reforms and investigate possible violations of election laws and other misconduct by election officials, campaigns, or political groups. That work aims to make North Carolina's democratic institutions more trustworthy and thereby increase public faith in those institutions. I'm joined today by Jessica Thompson, the Director of Government Affairs and General Counsel at Locke. I was asked to speak to committee on actions taken by the North Carolina State Board of Elections regarding the timely filing of petitions by We the People and Justice for All parties to be officially recognized and appear on the November ballot. Those actions by the board were entirely predictable based on the board's partisan nature. On June 10th, before the board met to consider the petitions, I published an article on Locke's webpage entitled, "Will the State Board of Elections Try Again to Stop Third Parties That Democrats Fear?" A summary of what I wrote then, along with some other information, provides context for what has transpired at the State Board of Elections over the past few weeks. To be recognized as an official party, new parties must submit petitions with 13,865 valid signatures, and 3 parties met that threshold. They are the Constitution Party of North Carolina with 14,504 valid signatures, Justice for All Party of North Carolina with 17,385 valid signatures, and We the People with 18,639 valid signatures. I then wrote, and I quote, "The final step is for the State Board of Elections to officially recognize the parties in a vote in their upcoming meeting. While that may seem like a fait accompli, there are a couple of interconnected barriers for the parties with the 2 most valid signatures, with the amount of most valid signatures. The Democratic Party's hostility to their efforts and the board's recent history of trying to put the kibosh on third parties." Unquote. Toward that end, Democrats have raised an army of lawyers to thwart the rise of third parties they believe might cost President Biden, now presumed candidate Harris, votes in November. Robert Linhart, a lawyer for the Democratic Party and former White House counsel for President Biden, telegraphed their plan of attack when he said that they would seek to ensure that third parties were not, quote, "simply a single candidate wanting to circumvent the existing rules," unquote. That is despite America's long tradition of candidate-centered parties, from Theodore Roosevelt's Bull Moose Party to Ross Perot's Reform Party. Those efforts have partially paid off in North Carolina. The State Board of Elections approved the petition of the Conservative Constitution Party after a minor delay. After further delay, the board certified the petition of We the People Party by a 4-to-1 bipartisan majority vote, but only after Chairman Alan Hirsch all but requested the Democratic Party to sue the board over its decision, saying that he believed, quote, "there has been subterfuge," unquote, regarding their petition, and that if someone wants to challenge them in court, they are welcome to do so. I think they have a good case. Now, part of the justification for delaying approval of We the People and Justice for All petitions and the ultimate rejection of We the People petition was provided via opposition from Clear Choice Action, backed by the Elias Law Firm Group and the North Carolina Democratic Party. According to a March 14th article in the Washington Post, Clear Choice Action was founded by Pete Kavanaugh, a strategist who served as deputy campaign manager for President Joe Biden's 2020 presidential campaign. In a statement for that article, Kavanaugh laid out his group's rationale for trying to stop We the People and Justice for All. He said, quote, "It is imperative that this election is a clear choice between President Biden and Donald Trump. No third party or independent candidate has any chance of winning a state in November, never mind reaching 270 electoral votes. They are spoilers, plain and simple. We're here to work with our allies to ensure that candidates are held responsible and everything is on the table. Everything is on the table," unquote. Clear Choice Action conducted what it called its own review of the petitions in North Carolina, and based on that review, urged the board to conduct further verification procedures. The board complied and attempted to contact 26 verified signers of We the People and 66 verified signers of Justice for All petitions based on the statement received from Clear Choice Action. Of those, 12 verified Justice for All petition signers claimed that they had not signed or do not remember signing it. Clearly, you cannot reject a petition based on a small sample from an organization that declared it had everything on the table to keep the parties targeted off the ballot. To their credit, the board then conducted their own review of the Justice for All petition by attempting to contact a random sample of 250 verified signers. They were able to reach 49 people on the list, a response rate of 19.6%. Of those, 21 said they had not signed the petition or do not remember signing it. That is 42.9% of verified signers who were successfully contacted. Now, it may be tempting to extrapolate from those 21 cases and presume that over 40% of all verified signatures submitted by Justice for All are from people who did not actually sign the petition. There are two problems with making such a presumption. First, board staffers ask people to remember signing a petition sometimes weeks or months after reportedly signing it. It is easy to understand that someone who signed a petition in a grocery store parking lot in February may not recall when officials asked them about it in July. Those who said they do remember signing the petition were then subjected to a series of follow-up questions. And political science research has found, and this is a quote here, the quality of information provided by individuals in response to recall questions can be influenced by several factors, notably the complexity of the question, deficiencies of memory, and the inclination to give socially acceptable answers. Deficiency of memory may influence the ability for verified signers to recall having signed the petition. Research by Washington State University political scientists John Pierce and Nicholas Lovrich found that, quote, signers significantly underestimated signing petitions when questioned about it several months after the ballot. Since all the persons contacted by the board staff were from the list of verified petition signers, any memory errors could only go in the direction of underreporting signing. In addition, a sample size of 49 from a population of 17,385 produces a margin error of 14%. That is assuming that you are willing to accept a confidence interval of 95%, meaning that 1 out of every 20 surveys is outside the margin of error. That may be an acceptable risk for public polling, but it may also be an unacceptable risk for denying people their political rights. If a 99% confidence level of the same survey is achieved, you have a margin of error of 18%. While the margin of error can go in both directions, it compounds the uncertainty caused by memory deficiency. In short, while the random sample conducted by the Board of Elections staff is a promising beginning for what could be a future method for verifying new party petitions, its application here is inadequate. We have previously seen from the State Board of Elections acting against parties that the major party fears. In 2022, the Green Party submitted petitions with over 16,000 verified signatures by county boards of elections, well over the limit needed for recognition. But like We the People this year and Justice for All, the Greens faced opposition from the Democratic Party. Again, it was the Democratic Party and the Elias Law Group that spearheaded the effort to keep a progressive party off the ballot. They claimed that there were fraudulent signatures on the petitions and that signers were prepared to testify that they did not sign, that they did not claim there were enough They did not claim that there were enough fraudulent signatures to put the Green Party below the threshold of valid signatures required for certification. They also accused the Green Party of obscuring the purpose and intent of the party and pointed out that paid signature gatherers collected some signatures. Signers of the Green Party petitions face similar treatment from a Democratic-affiliated group that signers for Justice for All petitioners faced this year. Here is how Matthew Ho, the Green Party's U.S. Senate candidate, characterized that treatment. Quote, "They were calling people 5 times a day. Actually, one person told us his wife yesterday was called 4 times in 3.5 hours. There were all kinds of levels of this. There was the harassment, there's the misrepresentation, and then there's the bullying or the shaming," unquote. As with Justice for All, the board voted 3-2 along party lines not to certify the Green Party in time to get on the 2022 ballot. They eventually certified the party, but only after the July 1st deadline to place candidates on the ballot. It was only after the Greens successfully sued the State Board of Elections that they could get on the 2022 ballot. The No Labels Party faced a delay in certification after State Board of Elections Chairman Alan Hirsch stated that No Labels needed to do more to prove that they satisfied another provision of the statute, that organizers and petition signatures shall inform signers of the general purpose and intent of the new party. However, unlike the Justice for All and Green Party petitions, the delay was insufficient to deny them ballot access. So this raises a question. Would the Constitution's Party's petition this year have survived the same level of scrutiny that the State Board of Elections gave the other party petitions over the past several years? We'll never know because the State Board did not treat the Constitution, we the people, and Justice for All parties equally. What we have left with is a board that gave a relatively smooth process to a conservative party to get on the ballot, made it a little more difficult for 2 relatively moderate parties to get certified, the No Labels and We the People, and acted to keep 2 progressive parties, Greens and Justice for All, off the ballot. Conservatives might like to think that this is evidence that they are brighter than progressives. However, that is more likely an indication of unequal treatment by the board. A large part of that inequality was that the moderate and especially progressive parties were targets of campaigns by one of the major parties and its army of lawyers to keep them off the ballot. In the cases of the progressive parties, the State Board of Elections was receptive to those campaigns. And I'm not willing to let Republicans off the hook just because Republican board members have been consistent in their support of certifying all the party petitions, including the right-leaning Constitution Party. The question is, would that party have faced more headwinds if Republicans had a majority on the board, giving them the power to stop the Constitution Party, just like the current board majority stopped Justice for All? Given the nature of partisan politics and motivated reasoning, I worry that they would have. So there are several things that can be done, I believe, to improve the party process over what is being done now. First, if several parties allegedly encounter the same problems with managing the expectations regarding informing petition signers of their purpose and intent, then at some point we have to see that it's the State Board of Elections that may not be properly communicating these expectations to the parties. And the board could also make some determinations regarding purpose intent earlier in the process and leave the June meeting for doing research on the required number of valid signatures and use that first meeting to make decisions regarding those signatures. Second, given the extensive problems in the party petition process have become a new norm at the State Board of Elections, the General Assembly may consider moving the deadline to submit petitions from June 1st to May 1st to give the board more time to complete its work. Third, anytime you have people gathering signatures, registering voters, or getting people out to vote and getting paid to do that, you increase the likelihood of fraud. That is especially true if you pay people on a per-unit basis. Of the 26 states that have initiative and referendum processes, 9 ban payment per signature. The General Assembly should consider per-unit payment bans. Fourth, The current process leaves small parties vulnerable to interference by the two major parties whenever the latter is willing to hire an army of lawyers to stop them. While I have noted problems with the random sample of the Justice for All petition signers this month, it is a method that could provide promise of giving election officials data on signers of those provided by, independent of that provided by major party attorneys. Ideally, the process would be systematic so that all parties are treated equally, done earlier to mitigate deficiencies in memory and with a larger sample size to increase statistical validity. Such a process would also account for false negatives, people who sign petitions but do not remember doing so. We should be careful about that last recommendation, however. While having these parties meet the valid signature requirement in 1 year is unusual, while having 3, there is no guarantee that this will not become more common. If such a random sample review process is required by law, the State Board of Elections should be given the resources to conduct those reviews. The events of the past several years have taught us that the party certification process is, if not broken, susceptible to manipulation by groups that believe that everything is on the table when it comes to preventing minor parties from gaining access to the ballot. The State Board of Elections and the General Assembly should take action to ensure that the ability of new parties to get on the ballot is not unduly influenced by how strongly one of the major parties wants to keep them off the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson, for your testimony. At this time, I will open it up to questions from members of the committee. If you will made known, McNeely, Dahl, Savannah, Cleveland, and Torbett. Are there any other wishing to be recognized? And Willingham. And if we could keep these questions relatively short and to the point, I know we have 2 other presenters that still have to go through testimony and questions. So if we keep these to the point, and we will try to move along as quickly as possible. Thank you so much. Representative McNeely, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Andy Jackson, thank you for coming and talking to us today. I have a couple questions for you. Can you please tell us, in your own personal opinion, about the leadership of Karen Brinson Bell, her time as director on the North Carolina State Board of Elections, your opinion of how she's led that group?
Well, now I have said publicly before that she should be removed from the position. That was especially after the collusive lawsuit settlement in 2020. Now, she is an able administrator. I don't think anybody would argue with that. I believe that she has allowed, for example, on her watch, in addition to that lawsuit settlement, there were times when the State Board of Elections has twice, and I'm doing this from memory here, tried to illegally prevent observers from doing their jobs, observing elections. Once was in the process of 2020, under the context of COVID, and then once they tried to change regulations so that, and I don't recall the details, but essentially so that observers could not fully do their jobs. I could provide you a copy of that if you wish. And that was eventually brought back once there were enough complaints in public hearings, and including threats of lawsuits. So I think on the administration side, she's been solid. On the policy side, not so much.
All right. Ken, I know in 2020, 2 board members resigned after possibly being misled. Do you feel like she maybe misled that board at that time and caused those resignations after it was all said and done?
I can't speak to her part. I do believe that was primarily officials under the Attorney General, the lawyers that were provided to give advice to the state board that were misleading the folks. So I can't specifically say that she had a role in that, to my knowledge.
Can you think of times when she maybe left out pertinent information to the board that she should have disposed to them?
I'll be honest with you, I'd have to look at meeting notes to tell you that. There may have been times when it's happened, but I do not remember them.
Okay, I know at one time that actually even the Democratic director of Get Out the Vote filed a complaint that misled information to the board. I'm just going to ask this real plainly, kind of again. In your opinion, in the recent votes by the board's Democratic majority appear to be more influenced by politics and protecting Democratic candidates, or is it more about ensuring the integrity of elections?
There's probably a little of both there. The issue that we have is not just them in particular. We've got a systematic problem in that you have these major party groups that are going to present this information, and we have a partisan board. And like I said, motivated reasoning being what it is, if you're presented information from a friendly group that will lend you towards getting rid of a third party that will presumably hurt your side, then I think it's easier for folks to make that decision. I wouldn't necessarily characterize that as a conspiracy, but the way that our system is set, it is easier for folks to make the decision, well, I'm not going to certify this group. There is certainly nothing, there have not been enough of the valid signatures that could be taken off based on the testimony and the information presented that would get them anywhere near below the minimum limit for valid signatures. So this is essentially an opinion that was done. It was subjective rather than on the objective standard of the number of valid signatures.
Do you believe that the State Board of Elections and the director of the State Board of Elections should have election integrity and not have partisan politics come into their decisions?
Well, obviously that would be ideal.
Do you think that's happening?
I do not believe that has happened in the case of these parties.
All right. That's all the questions I have right now.
Thank you, Representative McNeely. Representative Dahl, you are recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Jackson, for being here. So I'm inclined to agree with you on one point, which is I think probably more signatures should have been verified and called for. However, I'm a little confused about your statistical analysis about memory, because I am someone who can't remember to get the keys to her car. However, I remember signing the petition for the Constitution Party to get on the ballot. So I'm a little confused about the whole memory thing, and I'm not sure that that's a valid point. And yes, I did sign it for the Constitution Party because I believe in democracy, and I'm trying really hard to get to that point. Because I believe that all parties, if they, now, and then this is a two-part question, because I also am confused by the two candidates, West and Kennedy, who tried to get on the North Carolina ballot independently, were unable to do that, so then they went through this new party system because the party system threshold is much lower. So I'm wondering, have you taken, I didn't hear you talking about that, taking that into consideration in all of our numbers and whatnot. So help me understand that.
Okay. And I can't think of a better way of saying this, so I apologize in advance. The plural of anecdote is not data, so our personal experience don't necessarily comport to broad reality. I did note that there was evidence presented by the two political scientists from Washington State University, and I could provide some more if you wish, that when you get, especially when you get weeks or months in advance, there is a percentage of people who forget. I've seen elsewhere that range is somewhere between 10 and 40%. It varies widely depending on the nature of the question and the complexity of the question and how far, how much time is intervened. But there is drop-off in memory, and it does increase over time. Now, I did also note, and let's see if I can, I did also note that we do have a history of parties and their at least initial intent is to nominate folks for president. I mentioned specifically the Bull Moose Party under Teddy Roosevelt, the Reform Party, which, while it's still around, I think they just got recertified in Florida. I know they're, I believe, also certified in Minnesota still. They started as a Ross Perot party. I mean, that was their intent and purpose, to get Ross Perot elected president. So, if we do want to say that that is an illegitimate goal for a party, to get somebody that they like nominated for president, we could write that into the rules. But this is a separate thing. Having a party with the purpose of electing a candidate or a particular set of candidates is different than saying, than having a system where you're going to not allow independents to run, but they can turn around and, let me restate that again, sorry. There's a difference between having a party that has a goal and intent of electing somebody for office and somebody who's running outside the party system. And that has been generally recognized. That was mentioned at the State Board of Elections meeting.
You're recognized for up to 5 minutes to continue.
So I heard what you were saying. I'm still going to argue back, which is there's a huge difference between 83,000 signatures for an independent and 13,000 or 13,000 and some. And I'm wondering if there's any thought process that says, which one's easier to get on? I can't attain this number, so can I attain this number? And there is statute that talks about how we need to attain to get on a ballot. And I will concede that I do agree with you that I think the deadline should be moved. I think that asking any group to do that, a lion's share of the work within a small amount of time, is very difficult. And maybe this is a statement and not a question, that I just feel like there's so much. I mean, I'm on the record saying I want everybody to be able to vote for their candidate, and as long as they meet the letter of the law. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Representative Dahl. Representative Cervania, you are recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dr. Jackson, for being here. So a few questions. You're the only one that we're afforded to be able to provide testimony for us today. And I'm going to just be open. I am from the opposite thought pattern or party that you are representing, but I want to come to a commonality, because we have an opportunity here to rectify problems in the process that we actually do agree upon. But I find it unfortunate that I have to piece through a partisan testimony. But I want to let you know I agree with several of the things that you have stated, which includes pay per unit with those signatures and the increasing of that deadline from changing from May to June. And also the statistical analysis. I'm a statistician, so I had very much a problem, and I'm glad that you mentioned that. But I do want to make clarity, because there's people outside us that are relying on your only testimony to be true, to reinforce what we're deciding here today. Have you, question one, have you ever been through a process of having to collect signatures to bring in a candidate or a party to be part of the process of an election process?
I have personally not been part of a signature campaign.
So I have. and I appreciate that we have laws surrounding, and so we probably will talk about that more when the other people do testify. I want to ask you, I'm a statistician. Is your professional background, which I know you included it in your resume here, but I want the public to know, do you have statistical background when it comes to your profession?
I was trained in statistical methods as part of my PhD training to get my dissertation.
But you are
But
not.
I'm not a statistician.
Thank you. So I do agree upon the fact that the quantitative is very poor in this analysis. But you stated that there was a qualitative aspect of this, that one person, as your example, got harassed, bullied, and shamed, which we never want that to happen. But in the guise of you saying we should change from 95% to 99% confidence interval, this is one example to be provided as the qualitative of this whole process, which doesn't even fit into a 95% confidence interval. Your testimony is one example of a qualitative analysis of what's happening here right now, which doesn't even fit within the 95% confidence interval. And I don't want to dispel your professionalism and what you're trying to do here, because I think we're trying to do something here together. But we need to have the context be clear that there's more that can be done. I wish that you provided a little more non-bias, because I do read a lot of John Locke, a lot of Civitas, and you have many of your colleagues who do provide nonpartisan, non-bias. So what I'm trying to say is I do have agreement with you, but I want to let everybody know in our public that we could have done better in many ways. I urge you to maybe look back on your testimony, to look at it more in an unbiased way, to find solutions and not use partisanship to be able to solve this. Know and reassure that I respect your professional, and that I'm going to take these and hope that we create good legislation to solve this. But I'm going to relinquish some of my time so I can have some of it back once I hear more of my colleagues' questions to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Representative Cervania. I think you yielded 30 seconds back to the chair. Representative Cleveland, you are recognized for up to 5 minutes of questions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll pass.
You yielded all your time back, and so now we move on to Representative Torbett. You are recognized for up to 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Jackson, for being here. In your earlier comments, when you were just starting off, you mentioned the amount of signers for the 3, I believe, different petitions. Would you mind giving me those numbers again?
Yes, sir. They are provided on the State Board of Elections webpage. The Constitution Party was 14,504. The Justice for All Party was 17,385, and We the People was 18,639.
In your opinion, collectively speaking, with an assumption that at least some of those people would have voted for folks within that party they signed a petition for, could that not have led, if those were able to stand and they were excluded from the election, would that not possibly have led to the largest disenfranchisement of voters in North Carolina history?
Well, considering North Carolina's history, I kind of doubt that, since we've had whole swaths of the population that were not allowed to vote for several
Recent
hundred
history.
years. Okay, but recent history, defined in recent, yes, if presuming all these folks would want to vote for the party that they signed for, and that other folks, may come in, then yes, if this party is not allowed to be on the ballot, then yeah, they would be disenfranchised.
Okay, thank you. Reserved to balance my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Willingham, you are recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Jackson, most of my questions have been answered, but I have two things I just want to ask you. In your comments, you said that you thought the Attorney General misled the board, I guess giving advice as to decision that they made. You feel like the Attorney General staff, I guess, the attorney, gave the board bad information.
Yes, sir.
On purpose.
Well, I mean, obviously, they gave the information that they wanted to give. This may have been another situation of motivated reasoning where they might have believed that, yeah, they would lose, but given that, the same lawsuits have been failing across the board, it was, at best, inaccurate information.
Okay, and that's your opinion, though, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The other thing is that the issues that you spoke about and that you're talking about now, these issues exist at any other time when there was not a majority of Democrats on the board?
I went back to 2000, which is when we've had the last two, when we had the Constitution, the Green parties in their first iterations come in. And I want to believe that was 2018. Let me see if I can find that. This was, yeah, they were both in 2018. Both of those parties got certified 5-0, so it was unanimous, both parties. I did not go back further than 18.
Okay, so I guess the question I'm asking you then, these issues that you're talking about existed with Republican majorities also. I mean, this just didn't pop up. This is something that...
Well, this actually, even within the Democratic majority, this has just popped up in the last couple of years, because we had a situation where the Constitution and Green parties both got certified easily, to a situation once we started getting major party opposition to third parties getting in. It is at that point when we had more opposition within the board to those third parties, even if they've gotten the required number of signatures.
Okay, and the last thing, I think you mentioned somewhere too in your remarks that the reason possibly could have been why the majority Democratic board didn't want a certain or particular party on because they felt that would be detrimental to Democratic candidate?
That was, I said that was about the Democratic Party and the Elias Law Group, and that was their motivation to presenting the information to the board that was used to question the certification of those two parties, particularly the Justice for All Party.
Okay, so I thank you for that, and again, this was your opinion. I mean, that's not a factual thing. That is your opinion.
Okay,
that is your opinion.
Could you name what that is? I'm sorry.
That meaning that you're speculating that the reason why the board did what they did. You're telling me the reason they did it. You didn't know that. This is what, from what you understand.
This is just my observation, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Are there any others wishing to be recognized to ask questions of Dr. Jackson? Seeing none, I just have a brief follow-up question. You mentioned the lawsuit with the Elias Law Firm weighing in. Who are the parties to that lawsuit? Can you go into a little bit more detail on when that was?
That was the lawsuit in 2020. That was the lead-up to the 2020 election. And there were two pairs of lawsuits. One of those was Elias, and there was another one, and I don't remember which one that was. But there was one in a federal court where basically they tossed out everything except for needing to provide notification for people whose absentee ballot was not accepted, or to have a notification process. And that got combined in with a state lawsuit, and that state lawsuit, they ended up essentially folding and changing several aspects of state law, including essentially getting rid of the absentee ballot signature requirement, the witness signature requirement, and extending the absentee ballot deadline from 3 days, as was required by law at the time, to 9 days. The gutting of the signature requirement was later thrown out by a federal judge.
Thank you. That's a common name that comes up here whenever we're talking about election suits, and we hope that doesn't continue to be the case going forward. But thank you so much, Dr. Jackson. We appreciate you being here. You are now dismissed. You were happy to hang around and witness the rest of the committee, but you are dismissed, and we will now swear in our next presenters. Thank you so much.